Welcome back to the deep dive. This is where we take some of the densest ideas out there and we try to make them clear, insightful, and honestly, sometimes a little bit chilling.
And fun. We try to have some fun with it.
Exactly. Our whole mission is to get you up to speed, to give you those aha moments without the weeks of reading it might normally take.
And today, we're basically throwing out the standard physics textbook.
Mm-hmm.
We are diving into the very structure of the reality you think you're in right now.
It's a big one. For our learner today, we've cracked open a really foundational piece of material. We're looking at session 72 of the early sessions, book 2 of the Seth material.
But just for context, this session was recorded way back on Monday, July 20th, 1964.
Right. And the goal for you listening is to really get your head around this idea that physical reality, the chair you're sitting on, isn't fixed. It's more like a customizable, almost arbitrary construction.
A construction that's driven by expectation and collective agreement. If you can grasp this one session, it really shows you the limits of purely objective thinking.
Before we jump in and completely redefine your furniture, just a quick but really important note.
Yeah.
This deep dive is and always will be distributed completely free of charge on all the major platforms. It's for educational purposes, so please share it around.
And we have to give all credit for this incredible material to the Seth material itself and to the publisher, New Awareness Network.
We seriously encourage you, if this stuff sparks your interest, go study the complete works. You can visit the New Awareness Network website and their bookstore at sethcenter.com. That's SETHCENTER.com/the early sessions.
The source material is always the gold standard. Nothing beats it.
Okay, so let's set the scene, because the notes from the session are just fascinating. They give you this very human glimpse into how this data was received.
It's so good.
Imagine it's July 1964. It's a hot, sticky, humid Monday night. Jane Roberts, the channel, and her husband, Rob Butts, who's taking all the notes, they were expecting a guest.
A Doc Piper.
Right, Doc Piper. But he didn't show up. Just this classic, mundane little disappointment before this, extraordinary event.
But the weather notes are what really get me.
Yeah.
They just nail the contrast. It's that oppressive, heavy humidity that just makes everything feel miserable and slow.
Oh, totally. Bob Butts writes that he was just sitting there with my clothes stuck to my body. I mean, sweating so much he had to take emergency measures.
To save the note?
To save the notes. He had to put a piece of cardboard under his writing hand so his sweat wouldn't soak through the paper. Now that is dedication.
It is. But then you have Jane, who's about to channel Seth, this entity from another plane of existence, and how we should describe it.
Completely composed, walking around, and her skin was dry and fresh looking.
It's the perfect setup for the whole session, isn't it?
It really is. It's the central idea in miniature. The physical world, the oppressive humidity, the sweat, the sticky clothes, that's all intensely real on one level.
The objective level.
Exactly. But the consciousness that's about to do the work, Jane's consciousness, is already operating in a field where that humidity just doesn't seem to apply. It's showing its independence from the very environment that's making the observer miserable.
It perfectly sets the tone. The body might be trapped by the weather, but the mind is about to go somewhere else entirely. And that is exactly what Seth is about to teach them.
And Seth really doesn't waste any time. The session starts, and he immediately makes this declaration that this is a huge shift. He says they are now moving into the secondary stage of their education.
Yeah, after more than 70 sessions, all this foundational stuff, he basically gives them their grades. He says, you can be said to have completed the kindergarten level of achievement and training.
Kindergarten. I find that so funny. And also incredibly humbling.
Right.
All that work, all those complex ideas about consciousness and identity, and Seth is like, congratulations, you've learned your ABCs.
But he's quick to point out it's not an insult. He says, I say this not to minimize your efforts so far, but only to give you a hint of how much is still to come.
So it's not a syllabus change, it's like a whole new level of the game is unlocking.
Exactly, a quantum leap.
But what's interesting to me is that even after graduating kindergarten, he says the focus is still going to be on matter for a while.
Mm-hmm.
You'd think secondary stage means we jump straight to, I don't know, higher dimensions or something. Why stick with the physical stuff?
Because the physical stuff is the illusion they're most caught up in. It's the anchor of their reality. In kindergarten, they learn how the physical world works. Now, they have to learn how to mentally dismantle it.
And how to see its true nature.
Right. And to do that, he just drops these 3 bombshells that basically take a sledgehammer to classical physics.
Okay, let's really dig into these. Let's not just accept them. The first one is a huge claim.
It is. The first one is this. Form is not a characteristic of matter, despite appearances.
Okay, wait a minute. Hold on. I'm looking at my desk. It has a very defined form. It has shape, edges. If form isn't a property of the wood molecules, the atoms, then what's holding it in the shape of a desk? What stops it from just being a puddle of potential?
That's the question. It implies that matter, in its raw state, is basically shapeless. It's undifferentiated potential. The form, the deskness you see, is superimposed onto it.
By what?
By something external to the matter itself. By consciousness. By expectation. The matter itself doesn't contain the blueprint for desk.
Okay, so if form is an imposition, that leads to the second point, which is even more unsettling for my sense of security. Matter in itself does not possess durability.
Right. Durability is just our expectation that things will stick around. We build a house and expect it to be there tomorrow. Seth is saying that persistence, that durability, is not an innate quality of the molecules.
So it's an act.
It's a continuous moment-by-moment act of recreation. By us, the observers, we are constantly holding it in place with our recognition.
So this brick wall isn't staying a wall because brick is inherently strong. It's staying a wall because our collective consciousness is just relentlessly projecting the idea of wall onto that patch of the molecular sea.
Precisely. We sustain it. We think it's strong. And that thought is the active force field that keeps it looking and feeling strong. It's not an intrinsic property.
That reframes everything. Like decay and growth, that must mean they're not what we think they are either, which is the third claim. Matter can't either grow or deterioration in your terms.
Exactly. We see a tree grow over decades or a car rust. We see that as a linear process. A leads to B leads to C. Seth is saying our terms, our definitions for those processes are the distortion.
So the molecules themselves aren't actually decaying?
The pattern imposed upon them is just being withdrawn, and it's being replaced by a different pattern that we've all agreed to call decay or rust.
Wow. Okay, so the change isn't a flaw in the material itself. It's a change in the projection. The signal is fading, or a new signal is taking its place.
And that takes us right into the mechanism of how that signal gets projected in the first place.
Yeah.
The idea that all the separate objects you see are just arbitrary lines we draw on a single continuous canvas.
So if it's all just one big, undifferentiated sea of potential, how do we get a specific object? A coffee mug. My dog. Seth says it's a two-step process.
Right. First, you have the stuff, the matter, which is just the result of molecular composition. But to get an object, step one is you need energy. Energy has to be used to manipulate those atoms and molecules into a certain pattern.
The energetic imposition.
Exactly. And step two is just as important. Recognition. You and everyone else in this field have to recognize that pattern as a particular distinct thing.
He has that great quote, right? Using energy, you manipulate existing atoms and molecules into a certain pattern, which you then, and others like you, recognize as one particular object.
That recognition is the glue. It's the stabilizing force. If a collective consciousness decided to stop recognizing the pattern of chair, it would dissolve back into potential.
This really messes with my idea of space. I mean, I'm looking at a couch and a table, and there's what I call space between them. I think of that as empty.
Or at least less dense.
Yeah, way less dense. But Seth says that's a huge mistake in our perception.
It's a fundamental distortion. He says the space between the couch and the table is as filled with molecular structure as either the space taken up by the couch or the space taken up by the table.
That is deeply weird. It means this room isn't objects floating in emptiness. It's one solid, continuous block of molecular soup.
That's it. And we perceive couch because we've constructed and agreed on the couch pattern. We perceive table because we've constructed and agreed on that pattern. But in the space between, we just haven't constructed a recognized object. We've labeled it air.
But the molecular activity is just as dense there.
Just as dense. So all these objects are just conscious filters we're applying. Which brings us to the punchline.
Objects, then, are really arbitrary designations given to certain arbitrary divisions of atoms and molecules as a whole.
Arbitrary. That's the killer word. The whole structured world you're in is based on this massive, unspoken, relentless consensus. That makes it feel real, but it doesn't make it fundamentally fixed.
The sea spray analogy is so good for this. The objects are like little bursts of spray. They look separate for a second, but they're made of the exact same stuff as the ocean they came from.
They're divisions of the whole, not creations separate from it.
Okay, we have to hit the big paradox now. If it's all arbitrary, why does it feel so incredibly objective? I mean, if I walk into a wall, it hurts. Seth says There is no objective universe, and yet there is an objective universe. That sounds like he's trying to have it both ways.
It does, but it's not a contradiction. It's about scale. It's about what level you're looking from. The universe is objective on our level because our shared field of consciousness requires stable rules to function.
We need consistency?
We need it. If gravity just decided to take a break every 10 minutes, we couldn't exist, let alone learn anything. So the chair is real and solid and definite within the rules of our field.
But I have to push on that. If a truck, which is definitely outside my personal belief system, hits my house, the damage is real. It feels very objective and independent of me.
Right, because the field isn't just you, it's the whole consensus. The physical world is the agreed-upon pattern that almost every consciousness here tunes into and reinforces. The objectivity is the agreement.
So the truck, the house, the laws of physics, they're all part of the same massive shared program that's running.
Exactly. The non-objective part is the truth, that the entire program is temporary, it's imposed, and it could be changed if the consensus of the users changed.
So the chair is a consensus hologram. And because billions of us agree it's solid, it behaves as if it's objectively solid. Which brings us to the danger of forgetting that it's a hologram. This is where Seth gets really practical. He's saying, okay, great, reality is fluid now, but please don't go trying to walk through walls tomorrow.
Right. You still have to play by the rules of the game. You have to behave as if the universe is objective, but you have to hold on to the knowledge that is limited.
And the warning is that a too great dependence in a world of objectivity can lead to psychic imprisonment, which is unnecessary.
That phrase, psychic imprisonment, sounds so dramatic. But what does that actually look like for a person? How does believing too much in objective reality imprison you?
It's when you mistake the rules of the game for the limits of who you are. If you believe your age is an objective barrier to learning something new.
Or that your bank account is an objective fact that dictates your entire future.
Right. Or that your personality is fixed and you can't change. You are literally building your own cage out of objective facts and then locking yourself inside.
It's the ultimate trap. You project the cage, and then the cage proves to you that you needed to be caged. It's a vicious circle.
And Seth even cracks a little joke about it, which I love. He says, "This is not hedging the matter," if you will excuse a pun.
Gotta love some interdimensional humor.
You do, but he gives a way out. The solution he offers to break out of this prison is to study and practice what he calls psychological time.
Okay, so we need to define that. We all know clock time. What's psychological time? How do you even practice it?
Psychological time is your internal subjective experience of time. You know how time flies when you're having fun or drags when you're bored? That's the beginning of it.
So the practice is about consciously learning to control that, to expand or contract your perception of time through intense focus. You can do it with meditation, visualization. The goal is to prove to your inner self that the clock on the wall isn't the final authority on duration.
And when you prove that, you validate the inner self.
Yes. The practice demonstrates that your core identity, the you that's doing the projecting, isn't totally bound by the rules of the projection. If you can bend time internally, you start to realize you have more power over space and matter externally.
It changes the definition of matter completely. It's not a prison anymore. Matter becomes a means by which consciousness expresses itself within the limits of the physical field.
It's just a medium. It's like paint for an artist. It has rules, it provides resistance, but it's a tool for expression, not a jail cell.
And what's the long-term goal here? Seth talks about a huge payoff for humanity down the road.
He predicts that in a distant future, this will all be demonstrated, probably scientifically. The whole collective will get it. They'll realize the arbitrary nature of reality.
And that collective realization will lead to a great freedom for mankind.
Imagine it. Problems like scarcity, illness, resource limits, they're all propped up by our belief in objective limitations. If we realize the molecular sea is infinite and we can shape it, we solve the very problems we thought were unsolvable.
That's the real graduation day.
But first, we have to understand the mechanism. How is this construction actually happening moment to moment? This is where Seth really dismantles our idea of cause and effect.
We all learn it in school. A seed causes a flower. The matter of the seed slowly transforms into the matter of the flower. Seth says, nope, that simple story is a distortion.
It's a distortion because it's not a sequential transformation. It's a constant, simultaneous recreation. The seed doesn't mechanically become the flower.
What happens instead?
The non-physical blueprint of the flower and the expectation attached to the seed triggers the continuous construction of the flower pattern. The matter is constantly being pulled from the sea used for the pattern, released, and pulled again.
So the molecules aren't traveling from the seed up the stem, they're just being used for the seed pattern one moment and the stem pattern the next, based on an energetic command.
Which makes expectation the most powerful functional force in the universe. Seth says expectation cannot be stressed too strongly.
It's the fuel and the blueprint, all in one. And our expectations are what create that feeling of continuity. My desk looks the same as it did 5 minutes ago because I expect it to.
You and everyone else who recognizes the pattern desk, you're all holding it in place with that shared expectation.
But our expectations aren't formed in a vacuum. He says they come to us through psychic communication.
Absolutely. And the first and most powerful source is our parents. They pass down the rules of the reality they created. If your parents believed the world was a scary place, they communicate that expectation to you on a psychic level, not just with their words.
And you pick up their pattern and start building your own reality to match. You inherit the instruction manual for the molecular C.
Which is how you get trapped in the vicious circle. This is so critical.
He says, in all cases, constructions will follow the line of expectation, and often a vicious circle is initiated, where the environment created by an individual will then reinforce the very distortive conceptions that caused it to begin with.
Let's make that super concrete. Think of someone who believes, deep down, that they're just not good at relationships.
Okay.
They project that expectation of failure. Their energy starts constructing a reality where they overlook good partners,
Yes.
or they subconsciously sabotage things when they're going well.
And then, when the relationship fails, it proves their original belief.
Exactly. See? I knew it. I'm just not meant to be happy. They've literally used their creative power to build a prison, and the prison walls then scream back at them that they belong there.
So knowing you're the one doing the constructing becomes the key to freedom. You can start building things more to your convenience.
That's the promise. And he does say they'll cover the practical how-to on that later. For now, it's about getting the mechanics down.
And the mechanics lead to this last, absolutely mind-blowing concept in this session, multi-field utilization.
This just blows the doors off everything. Seth says that the very same atoms and molecules that make up your chair right now can be used at the same time by inhabitants of other fields of reality.
So the molecular components that I recognize as my chair, some other consciousness in another dimension could be recognizing them as, I don't know, a power source.
Right.
Or a piece of their own furniture.
Yes. Think of it like a shared subatomic canvas. You're projecting the pattern chair onto it. Some other being is projecting the pattern energy vortex onto the exact same molecule.
We don't see each other's work.
That's the chilling part. He says the inhabitants remain unaware of each other and only see or recognize the particular pattern that they have imposed.
So my desk is invisible to them, and their energy vortex is invisible to me. We're not next to each other. We're in the same space, just tuned to different frequencies.
Which is why our consciousness has to act as a filter. It tunes us in to the consensus frequency of this physical world so we can have a stable experience.
This whole idea of other fields using our molecules, it really puts our entire reality into perspective, doesn't it?
It does. It leads directly to the next point, which is about the scope of our reality. Seth is very clear about where our physical dimension fits in the grand scheme of things.
Hey, where's that?
He calls matter, atoms, and molecules, but one aspect and one single dimension of a far greater reality.
Just one slice. Our whole solid, objective, three-dimensional world is just one single layer in a reality that is immense and multi-layered.
And because we are only tuned into this one layer, our ability to manipulate it, even with our best technology, our best science, he calls it extremely superficial.
How superficial are we talking? Are we just a little behind, or are we like fundamentally missing the boat?
We are fundamentally missing the boat. He says we're only playing with the very outmost skin of a reality whose true thickness and depth is presently beyond your comprehension.
That imagery of depth and thickness is so powerful. It makes you feel like even when we're splitting atoms or editing genes, we're just scratching the paint. We're not getting into the foundation of the thing itself.
The point isn't to knock our science. It's to encourage us to expand our models, to not get imprisoned by the rules of the outer skin, but to start aiming for that deeper reality.
And the way to explore that depth is through something Seth calls value fulfillment. We should probably define that.
Value fulfillment is the core driving purpose of the inner self. It's that creative impulse in all consciousness to explore, to create, to know more, to express itself in new ways.
So in this context, it comes pushing beyond the limits of this physical skin and starting to engage with that thickness of reality.
Exactly. It's the journey of conscious expansion. And you can't really start that journey until you know that the deeper reality is even there.
And this doesn't just apply to matter, but to energy as well. He says form is not a characteristic of energy either.
Which means any physical form we create from energy can't last forever. The pattern is temporary, it gets imposed, and then eventually it's withdrawn, and the form dissolves back into the potential.
But the consciousness behind the form, that endures.
Yes, he's very clear. Energy is in itself conscious, and its consciousness endures. It's not a blind force, it's living conscious potential.
And all of this is organized by what he calls the entity.
Right, the entity is the bigger part of our consciousness. It's the part that's aware of all its other compartments. Your current life, past lives, alternate realities. The entity is the higher self overseeing all these different projects running on the molecular sea.
It's so much to take in. This session is so dense.
It is. And Seth, as the teacher, he seems to know it. He actually makes a comment about the session's length.
What does he say?
He says he intentionally made the session shorter to vary the intensity. It's a teaching method. He needs to make sure Jane and Bob have the energy reserves to actually process this stuff.
He even says the winter sessions are usually more intensive. Maybe the physical contrast isn't as draining as a hot, humid summer night.
It's the ultimate teaching strategy. Know when to stop so the lesson actually sinks in.
Okay, let's get to the fun part, the aftermath. We always love looking at the notes after the session because Jane and Bob were constantly running experiments.
They immediately started trying to apply the lesson. Practice psychological time. Prove the inner self isn't bound by the clock.
And Bob's notes show his attempts. On Tuesday, the day after, he tried. Nothing. No results. And it's important to see the failures. This isn't magic.
Not at all. But then on Wednesday, he gets something. He reports a generalized feeling of enlargement in his hands.
Which is fascinating. It's like his subjective mind was trying to literally reshape the objective pattern of his own body.
He was directly challenging the objective form. And he also noted that the half hour he set aside for practice passed very rapidly.
So he did it. He bent his perception of time, proving his consciousness could operate outside the clock.
Jane, interestingly, didn't have anything to report from those days.
Yeah.
But then the notes jumped to something that happened right after the very next session, session 73. Their guests, the Pipers, finally showed up.
And they decided to pull out the Ouija board, something Jane and Rob had used a lot before Seth came through.
And the Pipers, who were new to it, got results right away. The pointer started moving easily.
But the real breakthrough, the perfect demonstration of the lesson from session 72, came from Jane. And she wasn't even touching the board, she was just watching.
So what happened?
As the pointer started to spell out the name of the spirit communicating, she had this psychic flash. She mentally received the full name, Fred Lake. By the time the pointer had only reached the letter F, she just knew it. And she said she'd never had an experience like that before.
Wow. That's the practical application right there. The objective mechanism, the slow physical pointer, was just the outer skin of the communication.
Exactly. And Jane, having just been taught to look past that skin, was able to just bypass the physical process completely and get the information directly from the source, instantly.
She was basically eavesdropping on the psychic conversation that the pointer was slowly translating. Her consciousness just got there first.
It's perfect proof. The recognition of the pattern, the name Fred Lake, was being transmitted on a deeper, faster level than the superficial movement of the plastic pointer.
And she did it again with a date, right?
Yeah, she got a date psychically while the board itself was still fumbling around and giving an unclear answer. The internal reception was crystal clear while the external device was struggling.
So they decided to turn it into a real experiment.
They did. They planned to have other couples use the board while they just sat and watched to see if they could psychically pick up the answers before the pointer spelled them out.
They understood the pointer was just a physical pattern, but the real communication was happening on a deeper level. Jane was learning to tune into that directly.
It's the perfect confirmation of the whole session. When you recognize the non-objective nature of things, your own abilities start to expand. You gain that freedom.
So what does this all mean for you, the learner, as you're sitting there, surrounded by what feels like a very solid, objective world?
I think it means you're not trapped. You are not a victim of your physical reality. The big takeaway is that everything you see, from the ceiling to your shoes, isn't a fixed external thing. It's a fluid, customized construction.
And you are the one constructing it through your expectations and your recognition, along with everyone else. You are actively projecting and reinforcing the solidity of your world every single second.
And when you can really start to believe that, when you stop accepting the fixed limits of the world as absolute, you gain that great freedom Seth talks about. Matter is just the outmost skin.
Understanding that your inner self is the true source of creation, not just a product of the world. That's how you avoid psychic imprisonment.
We really do encourage you to dig into this stuff, study these ideas. The practical steps are in there. Again, you can find the complete early sessions books at sethcenter.com/the-early-sessions.
And we'll leave you with a final thought to chew on, based on that idea of multi-field utilization. Seth said that the same molecules can be used by inhabitants of different realities, and each only sees the pattern they themselves imposed. So if your expectations are what form your recognized reality, your car, your room, your body, what other unrecognized patterns, what other non-objective structures, or maybe even what other unseen beings might be utilizing the exact same molecular components as the couch you're on or the glass of water in your hand, existing completely invisible to you right here and right now, just on the other side of your perceptual frequency.
Something to mull over the next time you think you're alone in the room. Until next time, keep diving deep.